What is up, everybody? How is everybody doing? Today we have a special video. This one is specifically for my Mission Bit course that I'm teaching. We're going to be going over how to set up the terminal, how to set up GitHub, and how to use these tools when we're coding. And we're also going to talk about why we use these tools. So let's go ahead and get started. If you don't have an account already, go ahead and go to github.com right here, and then click sign up, create an account. It's going to ask you to enter your username and email, password, all that fun stuff. Then you'll probably get sent to this page. If not this page, then you'll get sent to something that looks like this, right? So what you want to do is you want to find this green button right here. You want to click new because we want to create a repository. Essentially what a repository is, it is a way for us to keep track of our code. It's like our folder, right? So on our desktop, we have folders, maybe like schoolwork. Well, this is essentially the same thing. We're just creating a folder that's just going to keep track of our code. We're creating this on GitHub because we want GitHub to be able to keep track of all the different versions of our code, right? So GitHub is a version control platform. It keeps all of our code on, you can think of it like a cloud of code, right? And if we have a project and we can submit our first version, so all of our code to GitHub, and it'll keep track of that. Then we'll make some changes, maybe add a feature, delete a feature, fix some things. You're able to go back and see all the changes you've made. GitHub also makes it possible for you to work in large teams, right? So you can have a project and you can have 20 people on your team, all working on that same project, all working on different features, and they're all just different branches. And eventually, if everything works, you're able to push all of these changes up to a main branch. And the main branch is essentially the code you deploy, the code that's public. You can think of it as public. It doesn't have to be public, but it's your most up-to-date version, your most up-to-date code. And we're going to be using GitHub to just keep track of all of our code throughout class. So you'll go ahead and click on new, and then we want to just give it some name. So we'll give it some name like testing this for video. Don't give it this name, but like maybe give it something, whatever project you want to work on. If you're working on a project that keeps track of, voting data, or you're writing a bot that scrapes data from Twitter, I don't know. Go ahead and just name it, whatever you'd like. And then we're just going to click create repository. Once we have this created, we're going to want to save this. This is what we care about right here. We'll talk more about this in class, but essentially these are commands that we're going to paste into the terminal. They're going to initialize our repository within whatever folder we're in. It's going to add a README file. It's going to commit a first message, and that message is going to be first commit. It's going to set the main branch, or it's going to set the branch to be main, and it's going to add our GitHub URL. So my repository, my specific link to this folder is this right here. And then we push it to our main branch, right? So our main branch is our only branch because this is a brand new project. Let's talk about the terminal, or if you're on Windows, is command prompt. This is essentially the same way we use the command prompt or the terminal to navigate within our computer, right? So within our computer, we have a bunch of different folders, a bunch of different applications. I can go to my desktop and I can open one of these folders right here. I can double click on this, open it. It'll give me all the files in here. I can navigate my computer using this method, right? This is the most common method that you're all probably pretty familiar with. However, we're going to be using the terminal. The terminal just allows us to speed this process up. So first thing you'll notice is it tells us like, okay, well, it says users owner. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means, and if I could draw something right now, essentially there's a folder called users. So this is our local disk, right? And you'll see the C colon, you might have like R colon or something like that, but that's this right here. And then it says, okay, we're in users. All right, well, let's go to users. Users is right here. We can click on that and it tells us exactly what is inside of users. So within our users folder, we have access to a default folder, owner folder, or public folder. It might be a little different for you, but the point is that this is what we have access to. So let's go inside owner. All right, and it tells us that these are all the files, all the folders that we have access to within owner. So if we want to verify this, right? So on this file application, on this GUI interface, we can look at it. We can visually see every single folder, every single file that we have access to. Well, if we wanted to do the same thing on the command prompt, all we would have to do is type in ls if you're on a Mac, So if you're on a Mac, type ls and press enter. However, if you're on Windows like me, you'll type dir. What this means is just to list everything out. So if I press enter, it's going to list out everything. So you'll notice there'll be a lot of similarities. So we have .atom, .bash history, .conda. If we go and check out our file, we have .atom, .conda, and then so on and so forth, right? So we have desktop, documents, download somewhere in here. If we scroll down, desktop, documents, download. It's the same exact thing except on the command prompt or terminal, right? So now we're going to be doing most of our work through the desktop. We're not going to be really working out of our owner's directory. So let's go inside of that desktop. Well, on this file explorer, to do that, we would just click desktop, right? We'd click desktop and then we'd have it all these files, all these folders that are on our desktop. Well, to do the same exact thing on the terminal, to do that, we would just type cd. cd meaning change directory. So we would type cd and then the name of the directory or the name of the folder that we want to go into. In this case, it's desktop. So we'll press enter. So let's see, we have all of these folders. Let's verify that we are actually in the same one. So again, you would type ls to list everything out if you're on Mac, or in my case, dir. And you'll have all these things. So we can double check this. 110 TA, 221 systems, same exact thing, same exact stuff, except we're using the command prompt instead of this file explorer. Now, let's say we want to create a folder, right? So normally if we want to create a folder, we would have to right click, go to new, put folder, create a new folder name. So it would look something like, so we would right click somewhere on our desktop, we would go to new, we would click folder, and then we'd give it a name, right? Well, we can do that exact same thing, but using the terminal. So if we want to create a folder or a directory and folder, you can think of them as interchangeably. I'll use them interchangeably at least. So to do this, we just want to type in mkdir. mkdir stands for make directory or make folder. So now we have to give it a name. So if I want to create a folder called this is a test folder. So I want to name it this as a test folder. I can go ahead and press enter and it will create that folder for me. And if you wanted it to be like this is a test folder, you're going to notice something that I don't want to do just because it's going to take more than 2 seconds to delete. But if you press enter like this, it's actually going to create a folder called this, a folder called is, a folder called a folder called test, and a folder called folder. So to avoid this, if you wanted to create a folder with all these words on it, you would have to add quotes if you wanted to add spaces, right? So if you wanted to add spaces in your folder name, just make sure you put it inside quotes, or else it's just going to create a bunch of folders. But I don't want this. I'm just going to create a folder called test for video. So I'm going to create a directory called test for video. Nothing really happens. We don't see anything. But if we type dir or ls, we will see right here. We have a folder called test for video. And if we go to our desktop and search for this, we'll notice right here, we have a folder called test for video created right here. So perfect. All right, so now let's go ahead and go inside of this folder. So just like how we went into desktop, we're gonna do the same thing for this folder. So we'll type cd for change directory or change folder. And again, we're only allowed to change directories if we have access to them. So when you type ls or dir, whatever that shows up right here, that's all you have access to within that folder. So I could not type in cd owner because I'm in desktop. I'm not in owner. I can't do that. And then we'll talk about how we go backwards. In File Explorer, it's pretty easy. You would just click this like back arrow and you would go back, and then we can go back to desktop like this. You just, back arrow and clicking stuff. It's pretty easy, but terminal, it's also really simple. But let's get back to going into our folder. So we created it. It's called test for video. Let's go inside of it. So cd test, and if I press tab, it'll autocomplete for me if there is no other searches that are like similarly named. And then I'll just press enter. And now we're inside of this folder, right? So if we open this folder right here, test for video, we go ahead and open it. We'll notice that there is nothing in it, right? So when we're working on projects, we're going to want to be able to create files, whether that be Python files, whether they be text files, Excel files, whatever. So if we want to create a file, if you're on a Mac, you would type in touch and then the name of your file. So let's say I wanted to create a file called test.py for Python. I would just write it just like that. So touch test.py, press enter. But if you are on a Windows, it's going to be a little different. It's kind of annoying, but it's going to be echo greater than and then test.py. So instead of echo greater than, if you're on a Mac, it's just touch. So I'd press enter and look at that. We have a file right here called test created. It even popped up for us. So now what if we want to go into this file, right? We don't want to have to double click this or drag it into our editor, whatever. Well, if you're on a Mac, you would just type, I believe on Mac, you're able to just type code test.py. You might have to install that code extension. So if that doesn't work, don't worry too much about it. For Windows, however, I believe you just type in test.py. Yes, so look at this. We have our file right here opened up. And let's just write a simple line of code. So we'll type print, hello, Hunter. Yeah, that's what we're gonna go with. I am a new Python file. We'll save it with Command S or Control S. We'll go ahead and run this, make sure it's working. And there we go. We have our Python file. It's working perfectly. Nice. So if we go ahead and verify that it actually updated, let's go ahead and open it right here. And I believe it's going to open up. Yep, perfect. So look at that. We were able to create a folder, navigate to that folder, create file, a Python file specifically, and write to it. So now let's talk about going backwards. We are now in test for video, but what if we want to go back to desktop, right? So we wouldn't do something like cd desktop, because if we do that, it'll just say this path is not specified. I don't know what you're talking about. So if we want to go backwards, really simple. All we have to type is cd space ... And just like that, it'll take us back a folder. And then we can do this as many times as we want. And look, I'm all the way up on my root, and you'll see I'll have access to these. So I can type cd and I want to go inside users. So I'll go cd users, cd owner, and then let's double check this. We should have, I believe it was default owner and public. So if I list it out, oh, default was like hidden. But we have owner and public. So we'll go ahead and go into owner, go back into desktop, and then we'll go back into our test for video. Double check, and we have our test.py. Now we aren't just limited to Python files. We can create any kind of file we want. We can do data.txt, so a text file that has just a bunch of data. We'll create that, list everything out. We have it right here. All right, so now let's say we wanted to, put this code on our GitHub. Well, we would just go to our GitHub. We would copy this command right here, and then we would paste it. However, if you've never used GitHub before, you might have some issues setting things up. So we'll go ahead and talk about that. If you're on Windows, you would want to download Git first. And then depending on what system you have, you would download it right there. Once you download Git, you're gonna wanna paste these commands into your terminal, but you're gonna wanna change them a little bit. So let's take this one, for example. This is git and then config for configure, and then it's configuring specifically our username. And instead of John Doe, we're just gonna put our GitHub username. So we would type something like git config global user.name. Now a lot of people mess this part up. They think user.name is where they put their username, but it's not. And then right here, you would type your GitHub username, just like that. And then we would do the same thing for our email. So git config -- global, and then user.email, and then we would type our email. Just like that. Okay, so then we would go back to GitHub, and then we would copy this command right here, open up our terminal, paste it, and then wait for all of that fun stuff to happen and just press enter. It might ask you for your GitHub username. In that case, you would just type in your username right here. And then it's gonna prompt you for your password. And the password, be careful when you type it because it's going to be hidden. So when you type, it's not going to show you the keys that you typed already. So just be careful that you enter your password in correctly. If you make a mistake and it tells you like incorrect password, just repaste these commands and press enter. And it'll tell you to enter your username and then your password again. And then just be really careful when you're entering your password. So that's pretty much it. If I refresh this, I will have some stuff. I'll have some README file. I'll have that initial README. Okay, perfect. But it's not exactly what we want, right? We created a Python file called, what did we call it? We called it test, I believe, test.py. Oops. Yeah, so we created a test.py file and a data file, but it's not here. All right. But we have a README. The README's here. That works. So what we can do is we can check the status of our repository. So to do that, we can type in get status, just like this, and press enter. And it tells us that there are 2 files that have been changed or added, deleted, just something new that is different from your repository and your local repository on your computer. So it tells us, oh, there's a data.txt file and a test.py file that are new. I don't know what these are. What do you want me to do with them? Well, we want to add them to GitHub. So to do that, we're going to do 3 commands that you're going to need to embed in your brain. So we're going to do get add. There's 2 ways we can do this. We can add this one at a time. So we could say get add data.txt, press enter. Then we could do get add test.py and press enter. However, we just want to add everything. We can just do get add and then period, and it'll just add everything that's been changed. Now we want to commit a message. This is just to, it's like just a short message about what we've changed, what we added. Usually these aren't like paragraphs, these are just quick and simple. So the command for this is just going to be get commit. So get commit -m for message, and then in quotes, double quotes, make sure it's double quotes, we're going to leave a message. So if this is your first time creating the file, we already have a first commit. So if it's the first time you're pushing something to GitHub, usually you type first commit. Since we did that already, we could type it again, or we can leave a more descriptive message. We can say added py file and data file, right? Just a little message for us to leave ourselves on why we pushed this into GitHub, why we made any changes. We'll press enter, tells us that 2 files have been changed, and then we're just gonna type get push. And once we do this, it's gonna give us this fun stuff. It's gonna tell us that it wrote 4 objects to this link right here. This is the link of our GitHub repository. So now if we refresh this, we should have 2 additional files with our message. There we go. So we have our data.txt, which should be empty. So if we click it, it's empty because we didn't add anything to it. And then we have our test.py, we should have our print. And there we go. We have print, hello, enter, I'm a new Python file. So let's say I want to change this test.py file. I want to add some variables. I want to add a new print line. So let's do the same thing. We'll type in test.py to open it, or if you're on Mac, it might be code and then space test.py. I'm not too sure about that. If that doesn't work, then I guess just use your mouse or Google it. So test.py is going to open up my file. And then let's clear this. Let's add some stuff. So we'll add age is equal to 20. We'll say name is equal to Hunter. And then we'll print out my name is name and I am age years old. So let's run this just to make sure it's working. We'll make sure we'll save it too. So Command S or Control S, and we'll run it in Visual Studio. And there we go. We get both of our things printed out. But if we go to GitHub, if we refresh this, we're not going to have our changes. So let's update this. So let's go back in our terminal. And then it's putting me in this like this report thing. So I'm just pressing Command C or Control C. So now let's do get status. Let's see what changes are available. What's new? What's the status for get? Oh, so look, it tells us, oh, something in test.py has been modified. All right, well, let's push this on the GitHub. So we'll do get add test.py, or we can do dot, but I mean, there's only one file, so it doesn't matter too much. Get add test.py, and then get commit -m, and our message could be added variables for info, like personal info. I'll say p info. And then we'll do get push, and and there we go. So now we refresh this. So we have our test.py, our new short little message, added variables for p info, tells us when we posted this. If we open it, there we go. We have our updated code, just like this. If we go back, there's also one other thing I want to point out. We can look specifically at the history of a single document, or we can go back one, and so you'll see this little thing up here, this little clock says we have 3 commits. That's just the number of times that we've committed something to GitHub. So the amount of changes we've made and pushed up. So if we click on this, over to see our first commit was just when we created that README file that will go into more in the future. So we can click it, but it's not going to be anything. It's just going to be README. Yeah, this is the only document we added, and have this little message right here. And then we can click on what this commit was or what this commit was, and it'll show us all the changes. So if we added something, it'll be in green. If we deleted something, it'll be in red, and so on. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, I hope that was really helpful. Those are the basic commands that you need to know for terminal, and setting up GitHub and being able to write code and pushing it to GitHub. And that's all. Peace.